culture. Classic pop culture.
Hi everybody, this is Steve Ludwig, host of Steve Ludwig's Classic Pop Culture and the Beatles Hour with Steve Ludwig at planetludwig.com. Here's an interview we did with Billy Hayes on June 28, 2016. It's show number 106. To hear the entire show, check out the menu at planetludwig.com. And now, please enjoy the interview. Our very special guest spent 5 years in Turkish prisons before escaping. He was caught carrying 4 pounds of hashish, which sounded like a good idea at the time, in his own words. Us movie-going lovers first became aware of Mr. Billy Hayes in the 1978 Midnight Express movie. He was portrayed by Brad Davis. The movie took some liberties with the true story, and thankfully for us, although it was a very good movie, Billy Hayes has set the record straight with three really wonderful books. First, the original, of course, Midnight Express. Later followed by Midnight Express, Letters from a Turkish Prison, 1970 to 1975, and Midnight Return, Escaping Midnight Express, which really answered a lot of questions. I think it's best if we let Mr. Hayes tell us the story himself, and it's a real pleasure to welcome to Classic Pop Culture Mr. Billy Hayes. Mr. Hayes, this is Steve. Thanks so much for giving us some time.
Good. Well, thank you, Steve, and I appreciate your kind words.
Boy, in 1978, you were a rock star to moviegoers. But for some listeners of a certain age who may not have been around or even see the movie, I know you've never told this story before, but for the millionth and first time, could you just give us a quick synopsis of how you wound up in a Turkish prison? And thanks, Billy.
Sure. I was at college at Marquette University, journalism student. I wanted to get out into the world, experience life so I could write about it. Surprise, surprise. I ended up smuggling hashish, which is marijuana, from Istanbul back to New York, which I did 3 times. I wasn't able to write about that in the first book, Midnight Express, just because legally it was sort of crazy. Sure. But on the 4th trip, I was arrested at the airport. They were searching people. It was the beginning of all of the airport security and such, which is obviously very prevalent now. But prior to that, people didn't get searched going on an airplane, as I didn't on my first 3 trips. And they searched me. They found the hash. They thought it was, wired explosives on some terrorists, and everybody freaked out and screaming. And the guards put their rifles. And once they realized it was hashish, they were all very relieved. All the guards put their guns down. Everybody was so relieved, except me, of course, because I spent the next, more than 4 years in jail, and supposedly I was going free in 54 days when there was a legal glitch, and they resentenced me to life in prison. Which the same judge who arrested me and sentenced me to 4 years in prison, he had to resentence me. The High Court in Ankara forced him to do this, and he had the prerogative of lowering the life sentence to 30 years, which he did. Thanks, I guess. And very... Yeah, desperate men do desperate things, and I ended up getting transferred. I tried a couple of escape attempts that didn't work, one to this madhouse, which was pretty bizarre, and then I got transferred to an island prison off the coast of Turkey, and I was able to escape off the island in a rowboat in a storm, and then rowed to the mainland. I used to be a swimmer. I was an ocean lifeguard and stuff, so the swimming part wasn't hard, but then I spent 3 days running through Turkey, dyeing my hair, and eventually swimming across the Maritsa River into Greece. And I knew the Greeks would never send me back to Turkey, and that was freedom, actually. Yeah. And then took a plane home to New York, stepped off the plane at the airport, and there were 100 reporters. Prison was weird, but coming home was really bizarre. Suddenly became a mini celebrity.
Told that story so well in Midnight Return, Escaping Midnight Express. Yeah. But you did return, quote unquote, a rock star. You were a hero when you stepped off that plane. No, it was pretty much U.S. versus Turkey, or no?
Well, yeah. I mean, as far as in the drug war, yes, I was sort of a pawn in the poppy game. But hero is a word that guys who run into burning buildings and mothers who work 2 jobs to support their family. Those are heroes. Yeah. I was an idiot who got caught smuggling, fell into a very deep hole. and just barely got back out again. I think it's one reason why people can sort of relate to my story, even though it's pretty bizarre to be arrested in a Turkish prison, is because everybody's fallen into a really deep hole in their lives,
Absolutely.
and struggling to find their way out. And so my story is just a little bit more compact and dramatic.
My goodness.
Principle.
You made an excellent point, Billy, too, because even in the movie and the Midnight Express book, which, if you don't mind, Midnight Express, I'd like to read a quote from one of the reviews from Midnight Express, the book. The book is a door that opens into love and fear, courage and sorrow so profound that the experience of it is quite simply unforgettable. It is a profound story. But the point that you made that was excellent was, when we read the book or saw the movie, most of us thought, how could he think he could get away with this? But you had gotten away with it 3 times previously.
Yeah.
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 So
the quote, by the way, is Gregory David Roberts, who wrote Shantaram, which is one of my all-time favorite books, and I'm honored that this man would write about that. So it's been something else.
Yeah, so I should have cited him for sure. We're going to talk about this in a bit, but you've just returned from the Cannes Film Festival, a return visit. You were displaying your movie Midnight Return, the story of Billy Hayes in Turkey. Why don't you tell us? Why wait till later? Why don't you tell us how that went and the documentary that you were presenting?
It was incredible. A friend of mine, 12 years ago, Sally Sussman Marino, her husband Tony, and I went to acting class. And I was having dinner at their house, and I mentioned how I would love to go back to Istanbul because, it was the city of my boyhood dreams. My first 3 trips there, I spent weeks and weeks and weeks. I loved Istanbul. I got along great with the Turks. I had a Turkish girlfriend. The world only knows my story, for the most part, through the movie Midnight Express, all starting at prison and all prisons. So they don't get a sense of the country, which is my biggest problem with the film. You don't see any good Turks in the film. And the film does not represent the country or the people. I've been saying that for 40 years. The film is such a powerful medium that the images on the screen and the stuff that's written in it, the differences between what I said and what was said in the movie make a profound impact. But Sally heard me say, why would you want to go back to Istanbul? I kind of explained to her the idea of, I'd love to revisit the city that... So she got an idea that we should do a documentary. And for 10 years, she put together... she's a screenwriter, and she's got a whole bunch of Emmys for her work on various soap operas. She's a storyteller. And she took my story and used it to tell a much bigger story about film and the power of film. And we had footage from the 1978 Cannes Film Festival, where Midnight Express premiered, where I met my wife, of all places.
Wendy West.
Yes, exactly. All of that is part of Midnight Return, the story of Billy Hayes in Turkey. It's a documentary, but it got into the Cannes Film Festival again, and that was a really big, docs are an effort of love. There's just no money, and the people spend all their time and effort. But she wanted to do this, and she's stubborn, which I love, and she never gave up. And we got it into the Cannes Festival. Wendy and I got to go back there about a month ago, returning 38 years later. I'm still married to this woman who I met the night of the Midnight Express premiere of the Cannes Festival. Of all places to meet someone real, at the height of hype and bullshit, which is what Cannes is, a big marketplace. I meet this woman who's literally the best thing that ever happened to me.
It sounds like you and Wendy figured it out, Billy. 38 years, I think.
There you go.
I think you got it down.
That's what, early on we said there's nothing we can't work out. And that's what we've done. And marriage is the best thing I've ever done. Not the easiest thing.
Yeah, hey, I'm 36 years married, Billy, so I hear you.
Well, there you go. You have to work at marriage to make it work.
Absolutely.
It's just been wonderful. So, it's a dream come true for us to be able to go back there. And then the documentary received amazing response. Thierry Frémaux, who was the head of the Cannes Film Festival, literally one of the most powerful guys in the world in terms of the world of film, because he picks and chooses. So he greeted us. He greeted Sally and Tony when they showed up personally and said, "Hi, I love your movie. We can't wait to get it up." When I came the next day and I was introduced, the first thing he did was walked up and patted me down under the arm. I just love that. So he and I hit it off
right
instantly. And he promoted the film to everyone we met there. He came and actually introduced it himself. So the crowd loved it. Hopefully, we're talking to distributors, which is the point of Cannes. It's a marketplace. And we're hoping to pick up a distributor who will put the documentary out into the theaters. So that would be quite amazing.
I'm sure we'll hear all about
I love
that
it.
when it happens on your social media on Facebook and
More
also
than one of these days, for sure.
yeah, and BillyHayes.com too. I want to let our listeners know Billy's 3 books, of course, are available at Amazon.com, and if you go to BillyHayes.com, you can order them via his website through Amazon as well.
Thank you.
Billy,
Also, they got footage of the show too. So if they
oh,
wanted to
excellent!
Look at the show,
Oh, wow, that would be excellent.
There's video of the show
Yeah.
on that too. Yeah. I'm sorry, you were saying?
No, I was going to say I absolutely want to get to your return home and the letters book as well. But if I can I just throw a couple of quick things at you about when you got to prison, and you can respond to them?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
When you, to be honest with you, one of the first things I would be worried about are getting beaten up or raped. How did you deal with those things when you first got to prison, if you don't mind me asking?
The first night in jail, I got into a fight with a guy who was he was a prisoner, but he was he ran the place, and he worked with the guards, and he had power and such. And I ended up in a fist fight with this guy, which I'm not real big, but I used to be very fast and nasty, and I used to do all this martial arts shit. But, all of that is bullshit. You want to get your ass kicked, turn around, somebody will kick your ass.
Yeah.
This guy and I ended up in a fight, and the next thing I know, bang, I've hit him in the nose. He's down. His nose is bleeding. He's screaming for the guards. They're rushing in, dragging me out. I'm trying to explain, he woke me up. He hit me first. They don't know. All they know is a new guy in a fight, first night. Teach a lesson, and that's what they did. They tied my feet up and they beat my feet with a stick. It's called falaka. It's a form of punishment throughout the Middle East, and it hurts like a mother. But the good thing for me is that this guy, he walked around the prison for like 2 weeks with a big black eye and a swollen face, which gave me some wonderful credentials in jail. It's like, what happened to him? This new guy? This skinny little blonde guy? Really? That helped me a lot, because if somebody's looking to mess with somebody, let's pick somebody else. By the way, are we limited? Is this FCC? Can we?
No, you can say anything at all, any language, any subject,
lovely.
anything.
Okay, thanks. I never understood that. I mean, people talk, they say shit, they say all these words. It's like, and you can't say it on the air.
You can say whatever the fuck you want, Billy.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So it helped me a lot in the jail to have this very first fight, this very first night. And the truth is, if you're a victim on the outside, you'll be a victim on the inside. If you're not, you're not. You constantly have to deal with shit, but for the most part, people left me alone. I'm too smart for the tough guys, and I'm too tough for the smart guys. So, leave me alone. It's not Oz. Everybody's got a picture that prison is Oz.
Yeah, well,
Oz is an extended, dramatic, brilliantly done version of prison, but it's not my experience in prison. But again, I've been in foreign jails. I don't know that I think I'd rather have been in jail in Turkey than in the United States.
Oh, my gosh.
Everything here is so rigid and disciplined and organized. 7 o'clock you wake up, 7:05 you shit, 7:15 you eat. Turkey's a little different. They kind of put you in and close the door, and then you got to make your way. Supposedly here's how things are, but then the reality is, no, here's how they really are. And once you figure that out, you make your way.
Well, Billy, in your letters from a Turkish prison, if I may quote something you wrote, you said that jail is simply a place that punishes those who break one of the mores of this society. Break a law, go to jail, do your time, go free. That was pretty much the MO in Turkey, huh?
Yeah, well, they didn't do a whole lot of trying to reclaim you and re-educate you and that sort of thing that I think is done in American jails. They just put you in, you did your time, and you got out. It's good. And the lack of discipline was something I think I appreciated in Turkish prison as opposed to an American jail. Although I hope I never find out that.
Yeah, really. Why? This is a rhetorical question. Why did you get such a stiff penalty, Billy?
Because originally I received the normal sentence for smuggling hashish, which was 4 years and 2 months. Just before going free, the U.S. government, Richard Nixon, the war on drugs was all happening at that time. And they were pressuring Turkey and all the rest of the countries that the U.S. gave aid to, which was everyone, to increase their penalties on pot, on drugs. The war on drugs was really beginning. So the Turkish court, they used me as an example and gave me a heavier sentence. This is what happens to drug dealers. But, I'm just one of the little small-time pot dealers. The big guys, they get away with it because they bribe people. And, of course, governments get away with it because they make the rules. Don't get me started on the insanity on the war on drugs. We'll never finish this. But that's why I got busted, because
I think
we're on drugs.
I think we're on the same side of the argument anyway, Billy. I will get you
Well, everybody is these days.
Oh, yeah,
Luckily,
really.
the whole thing is becoming so apparent, and the changes are so evident, which is nice, except while we talk about the end of the war on drugs, there's hundreds of thousands of people in prison right now for pot. So that's a long discussion. Anyway.
That's for another show, but absolute insanity.
Exactly.
I mentioned your Midnight Express letters from a Turkish prison. If I may, I'd like to quote another review of that book, actually. Poetic and lyrical, a fascinating read and a close look at the endurance, of the human heart. This book for me, Billy, really, the Return and Midnight Express, tremendous narratives. But for me, the letters really told me about you.
It's, the other books are sort of about the prison. This is about the prisoner. This is my wife's favorite book. Wendy publishes these now. Everybody's self-publishing, which is quite nice, actually.
Absolutely.
You have to self-promote. You have to self-promote, too, but at least, you don't have a
There's no big brother
in there. But, yeah, there you go. But again, there's no big bucks. You just you sell as you sell. And the books have been selling because people are interested. What I discovered was the letters books. It is Wendy's favorite, and it's inside. This is what it really feels like to be in jail, because these were never meant to be a book. These are letters that just escaped through the bars where I couldn't go, and for 5 years I wrote a lot every day. And people kept all the letters and gave them back. I used them to write Midnight Express. Put them all in a big cardboard box up in the attic where they stayed for 30 years until Wendy made me clean the attic, which I hate to do. And once I started, I'm doing it all. I took all these fucking letters and put them out on the curb for the garbage to pick up. She made me bring them back in the house, of course. And then I mentioned this to my lawyer, who's also my friend. And he said, "What letters?" I said, "These moldy old 40." He needed to read a few. I said, "No, you don't want to read." He said, "Let me read it." He read a few. He said, "You need to take all these letters, annotate them, organize them, do what you need to, but do not change a single word." And therein lied the difficult part for me as the writer, to read what I thought I knew about life, 30 and 40 years ago when you're young. It's so embarrassing sometimes. But at the same time, I'm quite proud of the book. There's an arc to the book that, once I started to read the letters, it was a very weird experience. As I read the words, I was literally there. I could smell the place. I could feel the blankets. And I knew exactly what was happening, which is why the letters were so good. Bill Hoffer, who I worked with on the first book, Midnight Express, who organized me and just kept me writing, because I'd have quit. Emotionally, it was overwhelming. And he kept me writing. We put an outline down. He said, "You need to write this, you need to write that." And Bill Hoffer said to me several different times, he said, "Look, I'm reading what you wrote about blah, blah, blah. And I get it, but you're writing it from now. Now I'm looking back at this letter from this date, and it's really a little bit different." And I would sort of get caught by my own letters. I mean, the letters were, this is what's real. This is what was happening. And my memory of it was a little bit off, so I was able to adjust according to the letters. And that was very valuable. And then I put them all away and never looked at them again. So to bring them out and to read them and organize them, I quite like Midnight Express. I feel like I'm limited because I couldn't talk about my real feelings towards Turkey. Midnight Return allows me to say all that I want to say, but the letters is the heart of it for me, too. So I'm glad you do, too, Steve. I'm quite proud of letters, actually.
And I must read something to our listeners, too, something from Letters from a Turkish Prison. I love your style of writing, even in a casual letter. Listen to this, listeners. "The sky is sagging today. A seagull moving silently across the sky, damp and alone, heading inland." It's beautiful, and yet it just flows right out of you.
Well, I used to write a lot of poetry in college.
Yeah, well, sure, but
I'm almost cured of that. Almost.
No, I hope. Hey, Billy, there's got to be a novel in you. I know you're busy as heck, but just down the road. Nothing about Midnight Express, or perhaps, but you're such a brilliant writer. Have you ever thought about a novel?
Thank you. I've got various things that are started in places. I've written a bunch of screenplays.
You must have, sure. Well, down the road, when you catch your breath, down the road a few years from now, we'll look forward to that. Okay, so Last question about the prison, then your return home. Going to the bathroom, toilet paper. I know it sounds crazy, but from a layman, these are things that I think about. And just
They
personal.
don't have toilet paper.
Oh, okay. So your hand, or
Throughout most of the Middle East, yes, which is why if you dip into the common food bowl, you use your right hand supposedly, because your left hand supposedly is for use of water. It's actually a much cleaner method of cleaning your butt than paper. The truth is, but it sounds a little weird, but it's what you have, which is, there's a little bit of water in a can or a spigot, and you use that to clean yourself. And then you hopefully clean your left hand. But left-handed the food bowl is very forbidden.
And don't be dyslexic and confuse the right with the left, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Last question.
One of the things I learned in jail is I learned how to turn off my smell. My sense of smell.
That's another thing. I can imagine the stench in that. I mean, you mentioned it in the book. I know what it was, but oh my gosh. Did you ever get used to that
no matter
stench?
No, well, you get used to everything, but what I learned was to sort of turn my nose off. I could turn my hearing off to a great degree. I could go to sleep at night, even when there's noise and there's radios and people and there's arguing. I could go to sleep at night and turn off all my hearing except the sound of the key in the door at night. Because once they lock the door in at night, nobody should be coming in for the most part. But if they are, it's usually bad news. It's like the guards or soldiers or something. I could be sound asleep with whatever else is going on, and I could hear that click in the lock downstairs, wake you right up. So you very selective hearing and very selective nose. But yeah, toilets were bad. But everything's in comparison. I mean, I thought prison smelled bad. Then I went to the madhouse. That's for me. That's the bar. That's the bottom of the bar right there. Because nothing smelled like Bakkercourt Madhouse.
Listeners, I'm skimming the top. These 3 books by Billy Hayes, and they have lives within themselves. I mean, each book, of course, is a companion to the other in sorts. But boy, each one, Billy, has its own personality, its own life, and they're so valuable. The 3 of them, read, one after the other. You're back. Thank goodness. Almost 5 years to the day you escape, and I'll let our listeners read that in detail in your books. But you're back in Long Island now, and in your book you said emotionally the worst part about being in prison had to do with your family. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The fact that I got myself arrested because I was running footloose, fancy free, and not thinking about anybody else or not taking responsibility for my actions. And suddenly it was like smashed into my face that not taking responsibility led to me getting arrested, but putting my parents and everyone who loved me in prison. That was really hard to take. That's still hard to take. If you hurt your folks, if you do something wrong, if you crash the car, you drop a hot spatula on their leg and they burn their leg, that goes away. What I did didn't go away. It just, it got worse. Every night, it was still there. That's a real hard thing for me to do.
Yeah. If this didn't happen to you, this may sound rhetorical also, and I'm sorry, but would the Billy Hayes I'm speaking to right now, would there be that type of person, or did you need this or do you think you would have had some other kind of thing within your life? Could you be the person you are today without the Turkish prison situation?
No, it's obviously it's crucial for everything you do forms who you are, and how you react to things creates character. I needed this. I desperately needed something like this. And if it hadn't been there on my 4th trip, it would have been somewhere else. Just because, again, I was not taking responsibility for myself. I was just running the 60s. Man, I loved the 60s. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, free love. I loved the 60s. And then suddenly it all changed. Wham! The sky fell on my head in 1970. It forced me to grow up. And it was a good thing. And I learned things in jail, valuable things that I hadn't learned up until that point, certainly. And I don't know that I would have. And I discovered strengths and weaknesses about myself that I didn't know, that maybe I wouldn't have, and that's a valuable thing. So, again, prison was the very worst and the very best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And it led me to all my books. It led me to Wendy, and it led me to a life that is interesting.
Yeah.
That's the word that covers the full breadth of the experience for me, right? You know, good, bad, all those things, they don't matter. It's very interesting.
We're speaking, everybody, with Billy Hayes, of course, the real-life subject of 1978's Midnight Express. BillyHayes.com, Amazon.com for Billy Hayes' books. You have an Amazon.com page as well for your books, so people can certainly find the three books. I really suggest everyone, please, by all means. Most of you have probably read Midnight Express. Catch up if you haven't on the other two, Midnight Return and Letters from a Turkish Prison. Did you go through any depression when you got home? It may sound like a silly question. I probably would have been overjoyed, but what say within the first year, what kind of arc did you go through, or was there an arc?
Well, obviously getting back was incredible. It was wonderful, and it was literally, dream come true time. But at the same time, I stepped off the plane to 100 reporters, and it never stopped. I was expecting a quiet return into life, and then I was going to do whatever, write my books or whatever. This sort of propelled me into it, and while it was wonderful, emotionally, there was a lot of stuff going on that I wasn't able and hadn't dealt with. Everybody kept saying, you should see a therapist. You should think about a psychiatrist. Like, no, I don't need it. I'm fine. I wasn't fine. I had so much stuff going on.
How could you be fine?
Yeah,
really,
exactly. Right? And it wasn't until really going to California, after about a year with the book coming out and suddenly there's a movie happening, and moving to California and writing the book was therapeutic. I mean, literally I came home on a Friday, by Monday I'm writing the book, and that was good. And as the words stuck to the pages, they sort of came out of me, and the nightmares that I was having faded away, and it was a good process. But I still had all this stuff going on. Acting became my therapy. Eric Morris, the acting teacher I met in L.A., saw right through all of my bullshit. He forced me to deal with stuff. He said, you realize every time I get you to talk about prison, you make some little funny little jibe or joke. I said, well, that's not true. He said, it is true. You can't deal with that. There's stuff you just... And it was true. I had all this emotional stuff going on, and and Eric made me realize all that stuff is my gold, G-O-L-D. As an actor, you need to be able to know who you are and experience the full range of who you are and what you have and accept it. And that became wonderfully therapeutic. Acting truly saved me. And right at that time, I met Wendy. So between her and Eric, they kind of saved me and forced me out and open and allowing all of my emotions and my feelings. And it's wonderful. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. I was leading Eric's classes. I'd run out of the classes like just screaming and yelling. And he said, well, you're not doing this. Like, you're not showing us this real stuff. How did you really feel? What did you really need? Like, fuck you. I don't need any of this bullshit. Mm-hmm. I'd run out of the class. I'd get in my car, start driving away, and suddenly I'd have to pull over. Because there's so much tears in my eyes, I can't even see the drive. All this emotional stuff was coming out.
Yeah, sure.
And at the same time, I met Wendy, who forced me to be, and still does, the best person I can be. And that means being honest with yourself and feeling all your emotions. And as an actor, I have a place to put them. Mm-hmm. I feel bad for people who have such emotion, because everybody's emotional. But a lot of people don't have a place to put it. That's difficult. That can turn in on you. So it was a good time for me. It was very emotionally... it's always emotional for me. Yeah. I'm an emotional guy. But this was a very... lot of change going on during that period. But all in the right direction and all good for me. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned your acting. Of course, you've been in other movies. However, your one-man show, Riding the Midnight Express with Billy Hayes, was so successful. I'm assuming that was another cathartic type of experience for you.
I kept thinking, people got to be sick to death up here. Billy Hayes, Midnight Express bullshit.
No.
But I did a show called Locked Up Abroad. Well, I thought so, and it's hard not to think about it, because I've been talking about it for 40 years. It's like everything in my life is before and after. I've done dozens of theater pieces. I've been in movies. I've been shot by Charlie Bronson. Nobody knows anything. They all know Midnight Express, for the most part. But I did a show called Locked Up Abroad, which is...
National Geographic, sure.
Yeah, exactly, which I really liked. I avoided for 2 years. They said do it, and I didn't want to, because I was just, again, I'm thinking, you got to be tired of hearing my fucking story. But once I did it, and they did it so well, and I was so happy with the results, and the response was overwhelming to me, that it led to this idea of doing this one-man show. I'm 69 years old now. All this happened back when I was in my early 20s and 30s. So a chance to look back and put some perspective on this whole story. And as an actor, what a treat and what a joy and what an honor to be able to do a show that allows me to be all that I am, whatever that is, and to give all that I have to offer, whatever that is, in a theatrical piece that the audience, I love theater because it's real. The audience is right there. You know if the show works or not when you're working in front of an audience. It's real clear on stage whether the show's working. The audience response to this has been overwhelming, and we've been doing it, like more than 3 years all around the world now, and we continue. We've got all sorts of dates lining up for this thing. But as an actor, usually you do a show, and no matter how long you run, in the very last show, you discover something. It's like, why didn't I realize that? Why didn't I use that before? And you're done, and the show almost never comes back. This show, it keeps coming back. Every couple of weeks, every couple of months, I'm traveling somewhere, and I get a chance to do the show and hone it and refine it. Mm-hmm. And after the show, it's 73, 74 minutes now, and I don't leave the stage. We just go right into a Q&A for about 20 or 30 minutes, which is very interesting as an actor to hear what the questions are and what people got or what they didn't get. And that's constantly allowing me to tweak it back and forth. Mm-hmm. And I have a director who is also a writer and an editor, so he loves words. So while we were processing this in the various earliest variations of this thing, we would talk about the difference between drift and float and wander. It would make my wife crazy. When you're pick a word, pick a word, move on. But me and Jeffrey would be like drift or float or wander. So as a writer, what fun to do that. And as an actor, I get a chance to keep doing it. So that's been just a joy.
And with words, once an English major, always an English major, right, Billy?
And there you go. Exactly. What else? What good is an English degree other than, which I don't even quite have, by the way. I left Marquette just before graduating. But I'm real good at Trivial Pursuit and crossword puzzles. But other than that, what good is your literary degree?
If only you would have packed a Trivial Pursuit game when you were on the airplane in the Turkish airport. But
I know.
Or on the bus, I should say, getting onto the plane.
I mean, how bizarre is that? I mean, I'm in Trivial Pursuit in 2 different places. There's a card, where was Billy Hayes arrested? And it's a trick question. It's at the airport. And I saw another one. Somebody the other day gave me a little Trivial Pursuit card. It's something about he was arrested in 1978 in the Turkish prison. What movie? Midnight Express. I'm in Trivial Pursuit. That's so bizarre.
You thought your stay in the prison was bizarre. You are in 2 separate places in Trivial Pursuit. Speaking of something a little trivial, and just a few more minutes, Billy. I appreciate your time.
Sure. Whatever. I'm good.
Okay. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Obviously, you're a music lover. You mentioned it a few times in your book. Playing music and things like that in prison. Right. All right, so you were gone from quote unquote our civilization, more or less, from 1970 to 75. When you got home in 75, you had already missed out on so many great albums. How did you ever catch up with all the great music you missed out on? I know it sounds silly.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. I'm stuck in the 60s.
That's not a bad place.
Fresh Cream, an 8-track Fresh Cream tape here. I listen to 60s rock and roll and jazz. Mm-hmm. And I've actually probably listened to less music than anybody including your listeners. When it's there, I love it. And, Wendy took me out to a concert the other night with Johnny Lang and Buddy Guy. I mean, they were great. I love them. Mm-hmm. But I don't listen myself on the radio. I just don't have music on all the time. Mm-hmm. And when I do, it's real purposeful because it really affects me. Mm. So I didn't really catch up much. I did get a chance a few years back, in between gigs and downtimes. I was doing a theater piece, and a friend of mine runs a trucking company, and he moves musical equipment all around the country, but mostly the West Coast. And he came and saw a play I was doing, and he said, that's great. It must be terrific to do a show. And I said, yeah, but I mentioned to him that, theater is, it's tough on the wallet, but good for the soul. Really good for the soul, but very tough on the wallet, theater. Because even when you do well, you don't make a lot of money doing theater. Mm-hmm. So he said, well, you need to make some money. I said, I'd always love to make some money. He said, can you drive a truck? I said, sure. Next thing I know, I spent a couple of years in between theater gigs or whatever else, driving musical equipment up and down and around the West Coast. And I got to hear some music that normally, again, with my fresh cream tapes, I don't listen to. So I heard all kinds of interesting new groups and rap groups, and I spent a week on the road with who was it, Ice Cube and the West Side Connection, and when they were doing their tour. So I traveled around with them, like rap music. I know it's the poetry of the street, and I know it's a bit boring to me, so I don't listen to it. But I get it, because I was like sort of backstage watching these guys, watching the audience. The girls in the front row of the West Side Connection story. Oh my God! So
that's
was
a good
cool.
gig.
And
Yeah, right.
It's a very nice gig, and I got to hear Maroon 5. I watched them warming up one day in between shows, so I got to get a sense of sort of a little bit. But I'm a total dinosaur.
Yeah,
I'm hanging on to the digital age by my fingernails, and I hear them cracking. I can barely open my emails. I got somebody else on the Billy Hayes website thing. Obviously there's somebody who does that. My producer put all of that, because I don't do all that stuff. And tweet. Now this dog don't tweet. All that tweety stuff. I can't imagine. So that's how far out of the line of things I am. But I've never really caught up on my music.
Well, it's good to know it's always there if you ever get some time, because there's a lot of good music you missed out on in the early 70s. Solo Beatles stuff alone.
The Eagles. I got the Eagles. I mean, when I
Mm-hmm.
came home, suddenly they were the Eagles, and I listened to all the Eagles and went to the concerts, and the Stones were still playing. I went to some Madison Square Garden concerts, but I sort of faded out of music. I don't listen to it that much.
Okay. I'm going to kind of throw a whole bunch of things together. You had said that many times, that Turkey is such a beautiful country, and the people were so misrepresented in Midnight Express. Right. You can answer these in any order you'd like. Are you upset with Oliver Stone for the way he presented the movie? And what is it that is so beautiful about Turkey that we can't see in pictures? I'm sure there's just got to be a feeling you get, because you speak so glowingly about Turkey. First, are you mad at however you'd like to go with it?
No,
Billy?
I'm not. It's not so much I'm mad at Oliver. He's a brilliant screenwriter, and he did what he did, and he was an angry young man. He was an unknown screenwriter when he got a chance to write this script. And he had a script called Platoon that Peter Guber and people read Platoon. Nobody would make it for another 5 years because it was too close to Vietnam, but that's what they read to get him to work with me on Midnight Express. So we kind of related to prison and to war, and we talked every day for like about a week in the Mayfair Hotel in New York with him snorting lines and smoking joints and knocking down Bloody Marys. He was a madman. I loved him. I loved his crazy energy. And I love his work. His worst films are better than most people's best films. I mean, effort-wise.
I'll have to agree.
Whether you like it,
I agree.
Whether you agree with the politics or disagree, he makes fucking good movies. But he put the anger in Midnight Express, the anti-Turkish, that wasn't in Midnight Express, my book. Even though in the first book, I couldn't write about my 3 previous trips to Turkey. I couldn't write about my relationships because I couldn't say I'd been there before. I do that in Midnight Return. I get a chance to do that, and I certainly do it in the show, talking about how I love the city. I didn't like the prison. That's true for anywhere you go, and I certainly disagree with their drug laws, but I got along great with the people. But none of that came out. So the courtroom scene in the movie Midnight Express, I think as an audience, you're with the protagonist. You're with me. You're with Billy Hayes in the courtroom, and you're spewing this stuff out that Oliver wrote, which was just brutal. And you're a nation of pigs. I fuck you all. I fuck your sons. I fuck your daughters. First off, if you're in jail and you're about to be sentenced to 30 more years in jail in that country, you don't tell all of them that I fuck you and I fuck your sons and daughters, because you got to go back into the prison. So that made no sense to me.
Right.
But logically, what I said was, the same scene, the reality in the court, which is in the court record and is in my first book, which is, if you're going to sentence me to more prison, I can't agree with you. All I can do is forgive you. That's the other end of what the audience heard in Midnight Express. And I think the audience was with my character, screaming and yelling these obscenities. And I think that scene emotionally is what just really turned the whole world off against Turkey, and it certainly turned Turkey against Billy Hayes. Because they've got me killing a guard, which I didn't do.
Right,
and
I was going to ask you that as well.
Yeah, and they've got me screaming these obscenities. And I think that's crucial to why the Turks then issued an Interpol warrant for my arrest. Not when I escaped, not when Midnight Express came out, but when the movie came out, and they saw that scene, That's when they issued an Interpol warrant that stood for the next 20 years. So, that's on Oliver, that's on Peter and people who did it. But at the same time, they made a brilliant fucking movie. Alan Parker, curmudgeon that he is a brilliant filmmaker. And the differences between the book and film, as a filmmaker myself now, I can understand why. I can understand, like, the escape. First thing, Alan Parker showed me the movie in the Super Theater in New York. I could barely speak. I was overwhelmed. And he said, well, Billy, what do you think? I said, I love the film. What happened to my rowboat? I mean, prison takes away so much. And for me he got me in there, for me to get out and to escape in that rowboat, that gave me back my life. And to not have it, like, where's my rowboat? I want my fucking rowboat. He said, what 45 minutes of the film do you want to cut out to do your escape? The audience doesn't need it. Get them out of the bloody theater. He made a film about hope and fear, and he did great. But I miss the real escape. I miss my robot, and I don't like that whole courtroom stuff. And I think that's what so turned Turkey against me and turned the world against Turkey. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed the Turkish people. I had friends, and I like Turkish culture. I do not agree with the government. They're repressive. They're right-wing. They've been, the more journalists in the last 2 years have been arrested in Turkey, like 1,600 or something. There's a lot of tension going on in Turkey, and I don't like what the government is doing. But I do like the people and the country. I know my Greek friends and my Armenian friends are all going to hate me for this, but they've heard me say this before, because they all embraced the movie because it made Turkey look so bad. But the film does not represent the country or the people. Does it show their prison system? Yes. Yes.
2000.
But, so does Brubaker.
In 2007, you returned to Turkey.
Right.
Was that to make amends, to apologize, just to kind of tell them I love you guys? How did that go anyway?
It was all part of the same healing. I felt like a full circle. I needed to go back there. I needed to go back and to balance things. I was a hated man in Turkey. For the most part, for something I didn't do.
I was going to say, it wasn't your fault. Yeah, you're apologizing for something that... Yeah.
And the movie, again, we all have to take responsibility for the film. I didn't write those words. I didn't make the film, but it is my story, and it is what happened. But I wanted the world to hear what I had to say, and this was a place to do it. There was a big international conference, and the world press was going to be there, and these Turkish policemen had heard me on YouTube saying, everything on YouTube these days, saying the same thing I'm saying to you now, which is the film doesn't represent people or the country, and I wish they did, blah, blah, blah. So they brought me back. And it was a bizarre experience to go back. Sally and Tony both went back with me, filmed it all, so it's all part of the documentary is me going back to Turkey. And I got a chance to apologize to the people for the damage that the film had done. And that made a huge difference. I had people afterwards in this press conference, the Turkish TV was there and the newspapers, and I had people on the elevator at the hotel afterwards saying, thank you for setting the record straight, when for years we've lived with this. I had a Turkish professor. I did a couple of lectures in the 80s. And right in the front row of this lecture, I knew a guy. I knew he was Turkish right away, and he had two young girls with him, like 10 and 12 years old. And at the end of it, he said, Billy Hayes, I'm Turkish. I said, I realized that. He said, I feel better about you now that I've heard you telling the true story of what happened and that you didn't curse out the Turkish people. But the damage is done. He said, people spit on my daughters at school. When your movie came out, what do you say to that? It's like, what can I say?
It's still not your
I'm
fault.
Sorry. But that's the stuff that I wanted to somehow balance and justify and have the world hear me say it. So that was a good all around, and it was an amazing experience to get back to Istanbul again and to have it all happening, and Sally filming it as part of the doc. And then, of course, I got to go out to Bakırköy, which has been abandoned now for 15 years. Thank God. They closed it down. They're modernizing the facilities. But somebody just, padlocked the place and left it. And when we walked in, dust covering plates on the table, and I got to walk downstairs into the basement and walk around the wheel, that wheel of broken spokes.
Yeah.
People said, oh, my God, that Bakırköy stuff, that was so well done, that can't be true. Yes, not only was that true, not only is what happened true, but Alan Parker went to a local Turkish madhouse. Actually, it was on Malta, and went to a Maltese insane asylum and filmed these totally, broken, bizarre people. I heard, in fact, it's in the doc, Alan Parker said, I'm a little ashamed now. As a young filmmaker, I wanted the authenticity of this madhouse. And they went and filmed a madhouse, and they used characters, and it was so effective, and it was just so bizarre. He said, I feel now that it's exploitative. I wouldn't do it now, but it was very effective. And so I got to go back to that madhouse and to walk the wheel down in the basement of Bakakoi. That was such a bizarre experience to me, because the basement of Bak, I've been a lot of places in my life in the world. That was by far and away the most bizarre place I have ever been in my life.
And it was portrayed well in the film, you feel? That experience?
The film portrayed it well because they used real madmen. Had a couple of actors who played the guy who was after me, who spoke English, all of which was true, but they used real mad people in the movie, and there's nothing so frightening and pitiful as to see people who have like totally lost it. You know, I'm not talking about people having their bulimia disease, whatever they're having. I'm talking people who are gone. This was a Bakakoi was for the criminally insane. So everybody there had done something that was criminally insane. And I'm there trying to convince them that I'm the crazy one, so I can be kept out of Samajala, and so I can escape from the madhouse. That's why I went there, to get a crazy report. Then I got there, and most of my friends in college would say, no problem, you get in the crazy report. But then I got to Bakakoi, and I saw the competition. Holy shit. I mean, that was the scariest thing I've ever done.
The competition, that's funny, the way you just put that. Yeah. The final question, and then I just want to make my closing remarks. But did the late actor Brad Davis, did parts of his performance capture you? Or do you feel it was not Billy Hayes?
Again, I love Brad. You know, people say, well, you're blonde and he was dark, and well, that doesn't matter to me. Yeah, he gave his heart and soul to that film. And I miss Brad. I miss Brad. I love what he did. Oh, I can critique it. I could critique it as a director and as an actor now. The scene where he's getting arrested at the airport, he's chewing gum, he's got dark glasses on, and he's sweating like a pig. Like, Brad, stop chewing. Take off the fucking glasses. I mean, I was cool going through there.
You'd done it before?
I'd done it 3 times before.
Sure.
I got bumped on the trip. But, like little things like that. But as far as the performance and what he gave, I mean, Brad really did give his all to the movie. And everybody did. John, incredible. Poor Randy Quaid. God, I don't know what's happening to him.
He's on Planet Quaid right now, it seems, Billy.
I think so, too. I feel really bad for what happened. Norbert Weiser, I saw Norbert came to Santa Barbara at the film festival when the documentaries. Norbert Weiser and Irene Miracle, who, as Norbert said, you're 2 love interests in Midnight Express. he played my boyfriend, as it were, and she played my girlfriend visit, and they both came to the Santa Barbara Film Festival to watch the doc, which was an incredibly, wonderfully warm experience. So I love. But Brad is long gone, but will always be remembered. Yeah, at least by me.
Yeah, and I'm going to leave it to our listeners to read about when you did meet Brad Davis on the set. Everyone, we've been speaking with Billy Hayes, and I wanted my listeners to know, in communication with Billy, setting up this interview, Billy, you were so accommodating and just such you are. Like I had hoped you would be. You're down to earth. You're a cool guy, and what else impressed me about you is that you owned up to what you did. Although I agree that the sentencing was totally out of bounds, but you're just a very cool, real guy, and I know my listeners appreciate it as well, and I appreciate it too, Billy.
I appreciate you putting me on, give me a chance to sell some books and to talk about all the stuff that I obviously care very much.
Yeah, let me go through them real fast. Midnight Express, Midnight Return, Escaping Midnight Express, and I didn't get a chance to give a quick review of Return, a quote of it. It seemed to anticipate my every question and answered all of them in the seamless roaring flow of emotion it created. It does answer so many questions, Midnight Return does. And then there's Midnight Express, Letters from a Turkish Prison, 1970 to 1975. They're all available on Amazon and BillyHayes.com. Look for Billy coming to a theater, a theater near you, an acting theater near you, in his one-man show when they get that back, Riding the Midnight Express with Billy Hayes. And we all can't wait to see Midnight Return, the story of Billy Hayes in Turkey. So, Billy, I'll let you go back to your Cream 8-track. I appreciate you giving us time. But really, all fooling aside, it was such a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you so much for your time, Billy.
You too, my friend. I appreciate it, and we will talk again one of these days, I think.
Oh, great. I look forward to it very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye,
Take
Billy.
care, bro.